Welcome to FCNYC. My name is Ben Chan and I'm here with Dominic Mauro, which means it's time to talk about mixed martial arts. And this weekend we have UFC 152, which features the return of one John Jones. And we are going to kick off the night with a featherweight fight between Charles Oliveira versus Cub Swanson.
Yeah, believe it or not, his for some reason Cub Swanson thought that Cub was more threatening than his actual name, which is Kevin. I don't know, it's actually kind of a push for me, but regardless, so they're fighting. Charles Oliveira, he made a bit of a splash in the lightweight division before he ran into some really tough competition by the names of Cerrone and Miller, and to drop down to the featherweight division where he's not made as big a splash, but he looks pretty good at featherweight too. So he's got really solid jiu-jitsu. I think he's got a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and he's great at just snatching that submission in the scramble. Maybe not working for it from the guard so much, but like when you're trying to get back up, he just latches onto you. He's really quite technical with that, and he's got good hands too to drive people to the ground before he goes for that submission.
And what does Cub bring to the fight?
Well, Cub, other than a picnic basket of fisticuffs, now actually that's about all he's got. I mean, Cub, he's had a long career. He's been fighting for about 8 years since Charles Oliveira was in middle school, I think. I mean, this is a bit of an experience gap.
But only 22 fights.
Yeah, only 22 fights in these 8 years. I mean, it's not the busiest workflow, but regardless. So Swanson, he's had a career with a few ups and downs. I mean, the biggest down was probably that 8-second KO he had against Jose Aldo back before Aldo was champion, and he was just this, whirling dervish of knees and everything. But I mean, Aldo still is. But Swanson, his striking's looked pretty good in the last few fights. I mean, he's not fought the best competition, but he's looked pretty impressive. I mean, he knocked out George Roop, the slayer of the Korean Zombie. He knocked out some British guy. I can't remember the name right now. So he's looked pretty good in this last few fights. So, we'll see, which one of these guys is going to be moving up the featherweight ladder, and which one of these guys is, maybe fodder for the Zombie later.
Okay, but you think Oliveira's going to win?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Swanson has really stepped up his striking to the point that Oliveira really needs to worry about it. Oliveira's no slouch on his feet either. I think that, and if the fight does go to the ground, which I think, all the fights go to the ground at some point, I think that Oliveira's got the edge in submission technique here. So I'd look for Oliveira to take this by submission. Okay,
and then in the next fight we have Matt the Hammer Hamill versus Roger the Hulk Hollett.
Yeah, a lot of H's in this fight. So Matt Hamill is returning from his really prolonged retirement of just under 1 year. He's fighting a UFC newcomer, Roger Hollett, last seen fighting in Bellator. He had a Canadian regional MMA championship belt a couple years ago. I really don't know an awful lot about the Hulk, but Matt Hamill, I mean, we know about him. He was on The Ultimate Fighter. He's fought almost his entire career inside the UFC. He's done pretty well against lesser competition. He struggled a little bit against Rampage. He struggled a little bit more against that other guy he fought. So Hamill's been really, not successful. Alexander Gustafsson, the Swedish guy with a really long name. Hamill's not been successful against, top tier talented light heavyweight, and that's not what Roger Hollett is. I mean, this is kind of an easy fight for a guy getting back into the UFC. Hammer, what he brings? He brings the wrestling. He's a super strong wrestler. His striking is powerful, but it's really slow. He never learned how to throw combinations, or maybe that's what he's been doing with his year off. But I got to expect Hammer just sort of takes this a little bit slowly and eases back into the octagon and wins a decision comfortably.
Okay, so the Hammer will smash the Hulk.
Somebody's getting smashed.
Okay, and then in the next fight, we have Michael Bisping versus Brian, the All-American Stann.
Yeah. You're going to hear about 40 times Joe Rogan screaming that Stann was in the military and he's a sergeant or lieutenant or something. That's actually very offensive that I don't know his rank. But regardless, whatever his rank was, you know what Brian Stann is going to do in the ring. He's a striker. He doesn't really have an awful lot of grappling. He got completely destroyed on the ground by Chael Sonnen, who's a good wrestler, but not, the most technical grappler. He doesn't, use a lot of high-level tricks. He just sort of, overpowers guys on the ground, and Stann couldn't defend himself at all on the ground against Chael Sonnen. So, Stann, he's really not gonna take the fight to the ground, and I think Bisping, if he's smart, Bisping will try to push the fight to the ground. Bisping, I've made fun of British people's wrestling on the show constantly, and Michael Bisping does prove me wrong over and over again. So I'm willing to declare that Michael Bisping has the best wrestling in the history of the British Empire, just hands down. Certainly enough to take down Brian Stann and ground and pound him if he wants to, but I think Bisping's, I said Stann is a striker, but Bisping's definitely got the striking edge. I mean, Bisping's much more technical. He's got much better footwork. He's got better cardio than Stann. I think that Bisping, he just sort of fights from the outside. He keeps Stann at bay. Maybe if Stann gets frustrated and charges, Bisping, ducks under it, goes for a takedown or something like that. But I really expect most of this fight to be Stann getting picked apart on the feet. I don't think that Bisping's really got the power to end it. I bet that he wins a decision. Stan's actually got a pretty solid chin. So, we'll see. But my prediction, Bisping by decision.
Okay, and then we have the first of the champion fights, an inaugural bout for the Flyweight Championship between one Joseph Benavidez versus Demetrious the Mighty Mouse Johnson.
Yeah, so these guys are crazy tiny. Like Benavidez is 5'4", Mighty Mouse is even shorter at 5'3". They're fighting for the 125-pound title after a four-man tournament. I mean, they found 4 men who are 125 pounds who know jiu-jitsu. That's pretty impressive, actually. So yeah, Benavidez, he trains with Team Alpha Male. That's Uriah Faber's frat house / wrestling camp. I mean, they're kickboxers, they're wrestlers, they all fight in exactly the same style, which is, really in your face, take the fight to the ground, pound the guy out. I mean, high on the wrestling, high on the clutching and grabbing, not so much on the striking necessarily, but Benavidez is no slouch on his feet. I mean, he really, he's going to try to take the fight to the ground, but, he's definitely no slouch on the feet. So he's 16-2. His only 2 career losses have been to Dominic Cruz, a weight class up. Demetrious Johnson is 15-2, and his last loss was to Dominic Cruz, 1 weight class up. So both of these guys have been sent down to this new division, and they don't have to fear any Dominic Cruz. I think Cruz would have to cut off a leg to make 125. Mm-hmm. So Mighty Mouse is actually an awful lot like Benavidez. I mean, he's just crazy fast. He's got great wrestling, great hands. It's going to be a really fantastic fight actually, because these guys are really, really evenly matched. I think. I don't know necessarily who's going to win. I think Benavidez has the edge because his training camp is just so good. I mean, Team Alpha Male just constantly produces top-level fighters at, now flyweight, featherweight, bantamweight, lightweight. I mean, they just top-level guys in all these weight classes.
The alphas of the division, if you will.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I hate the name, and I hate the popped collars and the shirtless bros walking around, but man, no, Team Alpha Male produces a lot of top fighters. So I think Benavidez has the edge just because he has superior training partners to work with. So we'll see. 5 rounds of tiny punching men punching each other.
Okay, and then in the main event of the night, we have finally the return of Jon Jones,
yes.
And he is fighting one Vitor Belfort.
Yeah, Jon Jones, there's not an awful lot to say about him that we haven't said in his previous fights. He's never been in trouble. He's been on his back for a total of 30 seconds after he pulled guard, sort of rub it in Rashad Evans' face that he could pull guard and nothing bad would happen. I mean, Jones is looked impressive in all his fights. You know what you're going to get. He's going to be this unorthodox, rangy striker who's going to use leg kicks and jabs to keep you at bay. And then the moment you get close, he's going to clinch you, trip you, and obliterate your face with elbows. I mean, that's what you get in a Jon Jones fight, and that's probably what we're going to get with this fight. Vitor Belfort's a lot the same way, actually. I mean, he's not quite a multi-dimensional known quantity, but he's definitely a known quantity. I mean, Vitor Belfort for the last 15 years has fought the same way. He rushes forward, throws this crazy flurry of really fast straight punches. He can throw 4, 5, 6 punch combinations just in the blink of an eye. It's very impressive. And if that doesn't work, gas out and get really disheartened and just sort of weather the rest of the fight. I mean, Belfort, he's got a lot of punching power, but no heart and not an awful lot of cardio. So Belfort's best chance is to win this fight or hurt Jones badly in order to keep himself mentally in the fight beyond that first round. But I don't know. I mean, Belfort's fighting at light heavyweight for the first time in 5 years. I mean, he's been down at middleweight for a long time now. Jones is just worlds bigger than any middleweight Vitor Belfort has fought in these last 5 years. And
Vitor won't have had a full training camp to prepare.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Vitor took this fight on relatively short notice. I mean, it's a hair over 3 weeks since that he found out there was that whole UFC 151 juggling act of Jones is fighting Sonnen. No, Jones Jones isn't fighting Stann, he's fighting Machida. No, Jones isn't fighting Machida either. Jones is fighting, it's a mess. So now Belfort is stepping in on relatively short notice. This is, so, you know, at least he doesn't have to worry about making weight. I mean, I can't imagine Belfort walks around at much more than 205 anyways now, so. So I don't mean to make it sound like Belfort doesn't have a chance, because he hits crazy hard. I mean, those straight punches that that one dimension that he's been working for the last 15 years has worked. He's knocked out a lot of guys in scary, terrifying fashion. I mean, he just annihilated Rich Franklin, who is a much better technical striker than John Jones. Also a middleweight, and John Jones is not a middleweight, but I mean, I saw that fight. I saw how hard Vitor Belfort hits. John Jones is not going to want to let Vitor check his chin the way Machida did and the way Evans did. I mean, you know, Jones got hit pretty hard in those fights, but neither of those guys hit half as hard as Vitor Belfort does. So Belfort's got a solid puncher's chance. I mean, it's not just, you know, the chance that a guy lands the best punch of his life and knocks out a guy. I mean, it's, you know, Vitor Belfort doesn't need a really good punch to just knock your lights out. So John Jones, I think he really wants to use the Randy Couture game plan from way back in 2004. You know, duck under those straight punches. Belfort has had problems with wrestlers for the last decade of his career. Just duck under his punches, and once Belfort's on his back, he's good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but not off of his back. So I think John Jones can win this fight by a ground and pound TKO, probably second round. I mean, I don't see Belfort lasting 5 rounds no matter what happens. So either way, I really can't wait to see.
Okay, Jones is a 12-1 favorite.
Yeah,
and he is if he wins, he will tie Chuck Liddell for most defenses of the light heavyweight title.
Yeah, so looking forward to this fight. We'll see what happens.
Okay, UFC 152 this Saturday on ESPN pay-per-view. And thank you, Dominic, and tune in next week for the results.